Hello everybody! In today's episode we're going to be taking a look at the Galactic Geography update heading to Starscape this May. We'll also be covering a few community improvements, a logo evolution, as well as some content that we have coming up on the horizon. Not to mention a special guest appearance from Keth himself. Wow! All this and more on the very first premiere episode of Starscape Direct. Now, before we get started, I just want to give a quick heads up. Everything you're about to hear is pretty well going to be covered by the roadmap, and we will be updating that shortly after this video goes live. So if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to hit up the Starscape Community Discord, or you can leave a comment down below. So with that being said, let's get started. CoreSec's new warp relay highways make it so that the player can travel to key destinations within the core regions, both effectively and quickly. Would-be pirates beware. PvP may be enabled, but that doesn't mean that you can just do whatever you want. CoreSec will be there to intercept you. They will do whatever it takes to protect their new warp investment. Oh, and of course they will be protecting any law-abiding galactic citizens who wish to use these relays. So with this update, you guys can look forward to a much more streamlined way of traveling to the outer core and beyond. Using the aforementioned relay network, you simply pay a toll, hop in the queue, and then it shoots you to your destination. To accompany this update, we are going to be introducing a new form of security status for systems. In policed systems, you can attack other players. However, once you do so, you immediately trigger an alarm that will alert CoreSec to your activities. They will then dispatch their operatives to pursue you and stop you from carrying out your dastardly pirate acts. Shame on you. Shame. But, to be real, if you actually want to engage in a little bit of piracy, you just have to be very opportunistic with your targets. Pick them wisely. I hear CoreSec's response time is pretty good these days. The Mining Guild will be making its debut in the game. They are the trade union's #1 competitor. This industrial cooperative prides itself on its mining innovations. While it may not be as big as the trade union, it is certainly good at protecting its investments as well as its workers. To learn more about the Mining Guild, simply check out our dev blog. And of course, we will try to answer any other questions you might have about them. Notably, we're going to be adding faction research bases to the innermost areas of wild space. This will be like a forward operating base for many of the factions. Admittedly, the idea is not as fully fleshed out yet. I will be expanding on these more in a future direct video, but for now what I can tell you is that these stations plan to be a hub for purchasing state-of-the-art faction equipment with your loyalty points. I look forward to giving you more updates on that in the future. Lastly, and certainly not least, you may have noticed we took a little bit of extra time on this one. We received a lot of feedback regarding a certain system in the game that wasn't satisfying a lot of players, so we have decided that we are going to incorporate a revamp to that system in this update. Most of you have probably already guessed it already, but we are changing insurance. So, here's what you need to know. We are removing insurance from unsecure space. And to clarify that for everyone, that means if you die in unsecure space, you will lose your inventory as well as your ship. Timer insurance, however, will persist in secure, core, and policed systems. Timer insurance in contested space will be conditional on your faction membership. Specifically, say you are aligned with the Federation. That means you will get coverage in all systems owned by the Federation in contested space. You will also have insurance in enemy capturable systems. All this said, venturing behind enemy lines into systems that are not actively capturable will result in consequences. You will not be covered. So make those engagements at your own risk, and if you are a neutral traveler in this conflict, be extra cautious. We as developers recognize the burden that insurance has placed on the economy as of late, and we want to thank you again for all of your constructive or otherwise feedback. As for the NPC faction warfare element of this update, we are actively looking at solutions to make that part of the game more engaging for players who enjoy it. This includes, but is not limited to, adding a leaderboard, ceasefire mechanics, an actual endgame victory mechanic, and naturally more rewards and purchases that you can make for loyalty points. We look forward to announcing these changes a bit more in depth in a future direct video. And speaking of the future, let's take a look at what we have coming soon. Starscape's logo will be undergoing a slight change. We are switching from the more divided, harsh contrast of the original to a gradient. We believe that this new logo is more reflective of the creative direction that we're taking with the game, which is why I am happy to be sharing a first look at it with you today. Same font, slightly different vibe. Hope you dig it.
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
We're finally doing it, baby. We're adding player stations. And who better to talk about player stations than the man who has already done it twice? May I present to you a Keth.
Hey everyone, how's it going? I just wanted to pop in for a bit and give a few words on why we think that this time this is actually going to work. Everyone always says third time's the charm, and I believe that's the case here as well. So the first time we started working on stations, it was based on some flawed assumptions. Essentially, we were expecting to be able to have large group combat, 200 players in a server. And that just never panned out. It's something that no Roblox game is really capable of without doing a lot of hacky stuff. So that we had to throw out the window. The second time we were working on stations, we were working under another flawed assumption, and that was that we would have enough time and enough resources to make a really fulfilling, essentially tycoon mini game, like a whole other game within Starscape, with such a small team. And that didn't wind up being the case. If we got pretty far along within the accelerator program, but if we really wanted to finish stations, it would have taken us 4 or 5 more months, and there were just more pressing issues. But this time we are operating on no flawed assumptions. We are not going to be assuming that we need 200 player servers. We're not going to be trying to get out a ton of content in a brand new game mode within the game. We're going to be getting out what we think is feasible, and we're going to start small and increment onto it in later updates. So we'll be talking more about our vision for stations in the coming weeks, and we'll be getting some feedback on what everyone thinks about it. We're pretty sure it's something that most people will be happy with. It'll be something that isn't quite as single player as the most recent iteration of stations were, but it's not going to be quite as giant faction combat oriented as the first vision of stations were. It's somewhere in the middle, and being in the middle we think is going to be good for this. So stay tuned for more, and I'll let you get back to the rest of the direct.
Thank you, Keth, for that wonderful message, and now let's get into some specifics. These stations, they're going to be more akin to like an industrial outpost. Here's what that means. Players will have about 4 decks to work with. We're talking a reactor level, docking bay, industrial level, and of course a command deck. Each of these levels will have their own essential functions, but they will also have fully customizable interior components. And we're not just talking about shuffling around furniture. This could include things like cloning pods. Let's say if you want to have your cloning pod on the command level, or maybe you would prefer it on the docking level. This is entirely up to you. Your player experience is unique to you, and we want you to be able to organize it yourself. Furthermore, some components that you add will also draw from the energy that your station is producing. Okay, so let's speed run a few of the obvious questions. I'm already anticipating it. What is the point of these stations? And man, I am so glad that you asked. So as mentioned, they are industrial outposts. Given their proximity to wild space and the resources within it, we highly anticipate that this will be very lucrative to the most industrious players. Naturally, having an industrial level of your station will enable you to optimize its production in order to get more bang for your buck when it comes to refining and manufacturing resources. Now, of course, here is the caveat with all of this. If you want to sell those things that you produce, you're not going to be able to do it from your station. You will have to haul it from your station's local storage back to core space. So be extra careful about your station's location. Make sure that you have a safe hauling route planned in order to secure those resources. Here's another obvious one. How and where do I build my station? Here's the simple answer. Purchase an anchor point. Once you have your anchor point, take it to wild space and place it in one of the many orbit slots around planets. These orbital slots will be accessible via light cruising. Once you place your anchor point, feed it resources, and eventually you will have a station, or outpost. But the same principle will apply for future stations. And once all is said and done, you simply have to maintain it, which I bet then leads you to ask, what do you mean by maintain? How do you guys keep coming up with these questions? They're so good, it's almost like I wrote them myself. Outposts require fuel to generate power. Ooh, I said it. Fuel. What fuel? Fuel? I'll explain it in a sec. Back to the note of generating power though. So your station needs to generate power to keep things like essential systems like your industrial terminals online. It also keeps your invulnerability shield active. See, if your station runs out of fuel, you're gonna lose your invulnerability shield. And once that happens, well, it's either just a matter of time until your station explodes, or maybe a player will come along and finish the job for you. Back to this note, fuel? Can I get a fuel double question mark in there? Yeah, fuel. Stations will be powered by deuterium fuel. For anyone who doesn't know what deuterium is, it is essentially heavy water. Heavy water is instrumental in powering things like, a fusion reactor, which, would you look at that? That happens to be the reactor that our outposts use. So, heavy water, where do I find it? Great question. You find it in a comet anomaly. The current system that we use is that mining ice gives you water. Here's how that's going to change. Ice will now yield both water and heavy water. The higher the density of the ice, the more heavy water it will contain. So at all times, ice is going to yield both of these resources, simply in vastly different quantities depending on where you are in relation to the galaxy. Naturally, if you're closer to the core, you're probably going to find less dense ice. But the further you go out into wild space, the more dense ice you are going to find. Once you have your heavy water, you will then be able to produce deuterium fuel. The last thing I need to say about fuel is that fuel will be a crate. However, it'll be unique in that it'll be the first crate that you can trade on the player market. We will release more information about this in the future as it becomes clearer, as we are still working on the specifics of the system. But we can't wait to open up a brand new door in the economy in the form of trading fuel. And we're hoping that it'll be a lucrative market for a lot of you tycoons. Who can access your station? You and anyone that you whitelist will have the ability to pass through the invulnerability shield and access your station. After all, why would we give you a station if you couldn't show it off to your friends? So, have fun giving your squad mates the grand tour. Can I expand my outpost exterior? Unfortunately not. That is a feature we are saving for future stations, but we can't wait to reveal it to you in a future video when the time comes. That being said, the interior modifications that you can make to your station should be enough to keep you satisfied in the meantime. And of course, the last question that I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about right now. Is there going to be anything after Outposts? Yeah. We are going to be adding stations, and they are going to be faction stations, the scope of which will require the maintenance of a larger group of people. More fuel, more features, and more than likely will be a modular station. So you can look forward to exterior improvements. I'm thrilled to be able to finally share this news with all of you, and so is the rest of the development team. We've been working very hard on making a version of stations that is more deliverable and achievable, and realistic in terms of our long-term goals. I look forward to talking about them more in a future direct video that will be more centered around the faction station update. For now, there are a few final things that I would like to address. Despite recent appearances, we have to say community is important to us, and we are developing a plan to broaden our community outreach and mend the relationship between both the developer and the player. This very video that you are watching is a prime example of something that we are trying to do to inject life into the community and make it a more fun and inclusive space for everyone. Not only that, but we want to express more accountability on our part as well as transparency in the updates that we are trying to deliver you. It also comes down to a desire to forge a more direct connection with you, the player. So there you go. I didn't just take direct from Nintendo because I felt like it. So screw you. Keeping with transparency, here's some more content that we have in the pipeline specifically pertaining to our community outreach. So first and foremost, we have the Starscape Developer Cast, or Devcast for short. This podcast will be recorded live and will be viewable on our YouTube channel. You'll be able to ask live questions as well. And it will feature Dandy, myself, and of course, Keth, as well as the occasional guest if we can get our hands on them. These guests can range from outside parties to prominent members of the community, whatever tickles our fancy, really. The conversations that we have will very much revolve around a lot of the updates that we're doing, and I think they're going to be more in-depth than what you're watching today. Consequently, the month in review section on our Discord, or I guess the quarter in review at this point, is going to be consumed by the podcast. We are going to completely eat it up and incorporate it into the actual podcast itself. So treat the podcast like the new month in review, only we're actually going to do it. We don't have a set date for when we're starting the podcast, but we're hoping to do it within the coming months. So stay tuned for that, as we are very excited to bring it to you. The last thing I want to touch on in this direct video, and again, thank you so much for your participation. Monetization is important for a lot of games. We don't make that much money off of the actual revenue we generate on Roblox, so we are very much dependent on contributions and volunteers. But as time goes on and more contributors join our workforce, it gets difficult for us as developers to justify just how much volunteer labor we are using. And that is why I'm happy to announce today that we are starting a Patreon. You see, we value the time that these people dedicate to the game, whether you are a modeler, a graphic designer, a writer, a coder, whatever you do, it is extremely valuable, and we want to compensate them for their work. This also opens the door to bringing in new contributors with different specialties, such as coding, so we can help expedite the development process even more. For our actual Patreon, we are looking at doing a 3-tiered system, with the first tier being a simple $1 donation. The next level up would be $3, and the highest level would be $5. Our $3 tier can look forward to the following perks. We're talking about exclusive behind-the-scenes content that highlights the development process, as well as early access to video content just like this. And that isn't just direct videos. We're talking about other content that we have yet to even allude to on this channel that'll be more grounded in things like, lore, perhaps? For all of the higher tier contributors, you will have the opportunity to have your voice heard on the podcast when you ask your questions. While we wish we could do something cosmetic for patrons, unfortunately it does go against the terms of service for Roblox. However, we will be adding an in-game credit. It'll show their name and list them as a patron/contributor. So you will also have your name featured on the end cards of videos just like this one. Finally, we are looking to give our second and third tier patrons a place to call their own. But here's where we need a little bit of help from the community. If you want to participate in the following poll, make sure that you go and you join our Discord server. If you want to get to our Discord server, links will be posted in the description below. So here is my question to all of you. If you were a patron, would you prefer to have your own exclusive Patreon server, or would you rather have an exclusive category under the main Starscape Discord? Please go to the poll, voice your thoughts and opinions. We would love to hear more from you. If you have any thoughts or concerns, you can also post them in the comments below. We really appreciate you interacting with this. And of course, thank you all so much again for your support over the years as we begin what I think is going to be a new chapter in this game's development, and we are very excited to deliver you more content on a more regular basis. That is it for this extended premiere of Starscape Direct. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. I have been your host, Stevie, Mischievous, Critique, whatever you would like to call me. It has been my utmost pleasure. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe to the Starscape official channel. Go ahead, go to the comments, tell me how I did. And if you enjoyed watching, leave a like. And if you're not following us on Discord, how did you get here, dude? No, but for real though, go ahead, join the community. We would love to have you. Again, links are in the description below. Thank you guys again for watching. Make sure you fly safe out there. And of course, I will see you in the next Direct video in June. Cheers.